a mistake a lot of people make is once you have a very compelling offer, a lot of times you don't really know the exact message that's going to get someone to reach out or fill out a form or take that next step. And I don't even think with the clients that we work with that it even has to be a single message. Like a lot of times with the offer, if you think about the problems it solves and the unique ways that your company or product can solve a problem, there are a lot of different ways to probably describe it. And I think that's the fun part, like brainstorm, figure out a lot of different angles.
Hey, Tristan, thanks so much for joining today. Really excited to talk about ABM. This is something we do for a lot of our clients. It's something that can help a business grow a lot, especially if you're looking for leads, but it's also something that gets done poorly a lot too. So we see things that go wrong, but we also see it have a really positive impact on a business. So want to talk off just start first by crafting an offer. This is something that I feel like we notice gets missed probably the most is people just are sending cold maybe emails or messages and maybe don't have like a clear way of how they're going to get people to respond or get them to take the next step. So what tips do you have on making a compelling offer, especially in a B2B setting?
Yeah, I think, and since we're talking about ABM, it's probably important to just talk about from an ABM perspective, there are a lot of different ways you can do account-based marketing, right? There are a lot of different definitions out there. Some people say it's just good marketing. Some people say it's outbound, inbound, all bound. We've got all kinds of bounds. But I think with ABM and the motions that we like to run, it's really like three different levels. There's like a one-to-one where you're really going after a specific account, right? It's very much an enterprise level play. You might be doing a custom event. You might be building a whole experience around that brand. It's a long, sales cycle. There's more of a one-to-few approach. That's where you've kind of segmented out your best customers that outweigh maybe a larger portion of your customer segment, and you want to really go hard after that group in a very special way. And then there's more of a one-to-many where, you're sending emails out, trying to engage with folks in various ways. You're running ad programs. You might be attending events and connecting with people in real life. So there are a lot of different ways that ABM can work. I do think, since you brought up Baylee, one of the most important things is that offer, because in many ways with ABM, you're trying to strike up a conversation. And with a lot of the companies that we work with in the B2B tech setting, we don't do a lot of product-led growth motions where it's like Slack or Notion and they're selling a $20 SaaS application and you get a free trial and that extends into something else. These are typically longer sales cycles. They are also a larger annual contract value, so typically $20,000, $30,000 and above. So in that situation, you're really trying to strike up that conversation and get your company at the top of the list for consideration in solving whatever problem that they have. And that offer is really the most important thing, in my opinion, in getting that initial connection and either paving the way for a salesperson to have a conversation or even someone on the marketing side to get a foot in the door. So we think about the offer. I think it really boils down to lining up something very valuable that solves a pain point for a customer. And in order to create a good offer, you really need to dissect those pain points. And I feel like a lot of companies we work with, we go through that exercise where we try to understand it as a marketing agency. And then in going through that process, we often find that our clients are trying to understand it more as well and really define what those pain points are. And then on the flip side of the pain point, trying to put together something that's valuable for your clients and something that's valuable for the customers that they're selling to. And that can take many shapes and sizes, a lot of different forms. And that's really the creative part of marketing, is trying to figure out what is an offer that someone will respond to. There are a lot of things like custom research. There are full-blown, completely free audits that you can do to solve a pain point. You can, do a survey and compile the original research and present it later on. There are a lot of different offers that we can put in place. But what we are seeing, and Baylee, I'm sure you're seeing it too on your side, is as the noise gets greater and greater in a lot of these channels, in order to break through, the value of your offer has to be greater and greater, as we're going through and working with a lot of clients. Meaning, when you do an ABM, let's find an offer that is packed full of value, like even a percentage of your annual contract value. So let's say, one way to think about it, let's say you're selling a solution that's $50,000 a year on an annual basis. What can we package together in a smart way that gives a prospect a $5,000 to $10,000 value upfront for free if they engage with us initially? That's one way. Like, I try to quantify an offer. What can we package together that makes sense? And that's the work that we're trying to do with clients, is come up with those offers. In a lot of ways, it's designing something that'll solve a pain point or quantify a pain point to figure out how big a problem that they have internally and how important that should be to solve. Those are a lot of the tools that we're using to really craft that offer.
I think your point of starting with a pain point is so important, because I see a lot of the time people are just like, oh, we'll just make an ebook about this, or we'll do like a sales sheet. That's just our key features and things like that. And that stuff's great. Like, you should definitely still have that stuff, but it's probably not going to be compelling enough for someone maybe to like fill out a form. Like, that's the price to pay. And so many people don't want to fill out forms. Like, we need to make sure it's providing value. And I mean, if you even think about your own habits, like, how often do you sit and think like, do I want to fill out that form?
Yeah,
It
probably
depends.
not. And I think there's a distinction between resources and offers. I think a resource can be part of an offer, but I don't think it's good enough anymore. And quite frankly, I mean, marketing hasn't changed too much on that side. I mean, offers have been a part of marketing forever. I just feel like we are finding you have to do more and more to really have it make a whole lot of sense. It's almost like a no-brainer offer. If I go ahead and fill out this form and I engage with this company for 30 minutes, and if I get something that let's say is $5,000 worth of value, that's good for me. Like, I might not be ready to buy now, but I can see how this company works. I can see what their solution does, their product, how it can help me specifically. That's what you're trying to get to with an offer. You're trying to establish that one-to-one connection. And it is a dance somewhat, because you want to make sure these are qualified customers that you're prospects that you're working for. You don't want to go ahead and do all of this work for free, for everyone. But that's part of segmenting out your prospects. And that is, a key piece too, is just on the front end, making sure that we filter and that we are identifying our true best customers to go after. And I would argue, if you do that work up front and you know who your customers are and what their pain points are, why wouldn't you go ahead and extend yourself and put together a really strong offer to have that conversation? I feel like, it's just this balancing act that a lot of companies aren't willing to necessarily do. And that's what we're trying to drive our customers to do moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things you had mentioned is really diving into those pain points. When you're doing this for clients, what does this usually look like? How are you trying to uncover those pain points and get more information first?
There are a lot of different frameworks to use to figure out the pain points, but a lot of it comes from just talking with customers and understanding their jobs to be done. It's another buzzword or framework that's often used. But like, if you think about the person on the other end that is potentially either a champion for your product or their actual buyer that's leading the charge, what are they trying to get done? Are they trying to improve something? Is there a workflow that your product helps solve that really gets them to the next phase faster, or cuts costs, whatever that is? We have to really understand how big these problems are and what exactly they are, like really understanding how important these pain points are, because that it all comes down to, we talk about a nice to have product or a must have product. There are a lot of folks that, look at a painkiller or a vitamin, it's like, I really want to focus on the pain points that are very strong and that entice people to actually solve it. It's got to be in the top of their list. And that's what you really want to understand. How does your product really solve those hot ticket items? And that's what you have to build around. And you have to really build a deep understanding of that. And that's why we encourage talking to customers so much and doing case studies and really uncovering, the world that they live in, and trying to figure out, what else we can do to fully understand the problems that they have.
Yeah. Talking with customers or talking to your sales team, because your sales team's talking to customers most of the time, you're going to learn so much doing that. You're talking about medicine. Is it a mosquito bite or is it a shark bite?
Yeah.
Like what's bugging them the most? So once we've nailed down a really good offer that's focused on pain points, I want to talk about what are some of your tips on how to get that message out, particularly when it comes to cold email or cold LinkedIn messaging. Earlier today, you were telling me how someone was like, you can just use AI and create a bunch of messages.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your thoughts on that and what tips do you have?
Well, a mistake a lot of people make is once you have a very compelling offer, a lot of times you don't really know the exact message that's going to get someone to reach out or fill out a form or take that next step. And I don't even think with the clients that we work with that it even has to be a single message. Like a lot of times with the offer, if you think about the problems it solves and the unique ways that your company or product can solve a problem, there are a lot of different ways to probably describe it. And I think that's the fun part, like brainstorm, figure out a lot of different angles, figure out ways that you can showcase the offer in a few ways. Like the offer, for example, if you had, let's say, a competitive benchmark report or something where you are demonstrating how an organization compares to some of their competitors in some certain area. And let's say you can do that work, and then you can show them the opportunity or the gap that they have that's really valuable to them, right? But there are a lot of different ways to describe that. And you can get that message across through email in a very short, concise way, 1 to 2 sentences in a cold email. That could be one way of doing it. You could also showcase that in a whole paid program across LinkedIn and other channels, perhaps, where you're showcasing that same message in visuals. Maybe you have a video component that tells a short story. Maybe you have a case study that talks about a company that had a similar problem. They not only took you up on the offer, but they also then took the next steps and purchased your product and have used it for a year perhaps. And so we think about, how to get these messages across. I think you can do it in a number of ways. And that truly is what an ABM program looks like in my eyes, where it's not only cold email or, an email nurture for a previous, maybe closed lost deals we're going and trying to re-engage. But it's all about explaining the offer in a lot of different ways. And that could take the form of ads, video ads, image ads on LinkedIn, Facebook, retargeting, running emails. Your sales team can even make phone calls and present that offer as well. So there are a lot of different ways to bundle that together. And I think the big idea here is that it's not always just one message that's going to crack the code. It takes, a lot of different, just more frequency in a lot of cases and describing it in different ways.
Yeah, I think testing things is so important. We have a client who works in the manufacturing space, and we did just that. We tested out kind of 2 different styles. One was like a very educational, like we shared some research about how tariffs are affecting the industry. And then another one was a bit more focused on like some ebooks we had created talking about the state of the industry, but they had to download the ebook to really get those stats. And we all had assumptions and stuff, but we learned pretty quickly that their audience just loved the stats. Like they really liked the educational messages. They were longer because I know we tend to like shorter messages, but their audience just tended to like a longer message that was really informative, and that worked well for them. And you just learn that by testing things out and trying a few different approaches.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So what other tips do you have just for crafting messages? Obviously, like things can vary industry to industry, but like when you're crafting a subject line or when you're maybe adding attachments or things like that, what tips do you have there?
I think when we walk through copy and how to, I mean, there's so many different ways to think about that. I think a lot of it's just conversational. You can ask customers, what drew you to this offer? Just go back and listen to call recordings, understand, how they talk about their problem. I think it really is copywriting. I forget who even said it, where it's not like writing from scratch. It's more about composing different words together. It's like more of a puzzle that you're trying to
Yeah.
put together. Because I think there are a lot of inputs that you can get. You can get inputs from sales calls, from, customer calls with the customer success team. You can just try to understand how people are talking about their problem in other webinars and podcasts that they appear on. There's so much data out there. And I feel like that is a good use case of AI is like, let's assemble a lot of this research and this raw data from conversations. How can we use that to assemble copy that will resonate with a set of prospects? I think that's something that people don't talk about enough is, it's not having AI like write a lot of this material just out of thin air. It's like, well, let's get very specific. I had a conversation. Here's 5 customer calls that we had around this specific pain point. These are the questions we asked. This is how they talked about it. What ideas do we have? Like, let's brainstorm. Let's see what sticks. And once again, I think it's just more about getting more ideas on the table and seeing what puzzle pieces you have to play with. That I think is the unique advantage of some of the the tools that we have access to right now to really just get a lot of different options on the table and show this in a variety of ways to
Yeah.
prospects, a lot of different channels.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is what role do you think AI has in all of this? I'm glad you were able to touch on that.
Yeah. I don't think AI, well, I mean, you could even use like asynchronous recording, like Riverside, where we're recording this, podcast on Riverside. They have an asynchronous recording. Like there are different ways you can get like real dialogue from people. And I think that is just really a big piece that's highly underrated right now is using AI to sift through a lot of the information and make sense of it and kind of build on those ideas and you have the ability to put that together. But AI, at least right now, it's not doing the hard work. It's not having those general conversations. And Baylee, you and I are talking to customers all the time. And that's really where we get the best information because I feel like it's not always the first question you ask. It's the second and third question that really gets you what you need. And I feel like right now AI might just be on the surface unless you have that raw data to share and mix into the equation as well.
Yeah, the AI won't build the strategy for you, but it can help with some of the executional steps and make things go a little faster. So then once you launch a campaign, you have a couple different messaging that you're testing out, we have a good offer. How do you assess, well, whether the offer or the messaging is working? Like what are some signals that you're looking for?
I think there are some early signals that you can at least gather initially. Like maybe you have some existing customers and you just run an idea by them to say, hey, I know we do that with our own agencies. It's like we test our own offers. And sometimes those are for existing customers and sometimes those are for prospects that, we weren't the right fit at the right time, but let's put an offer in place and let's try to get a win. And I think your testing doesn't necessarily have to come through like emails you're sending and ads you're running. Maybe you just look at your existing customer base and just see, hey, we have a good relationship with this organization over here. maybe it's a module they haven't purchased or a specific feature that they don't know about. Maybe you can present this offer to them to see if they can get more out of your product. That's one way of looking at it. And that's where you get real-time feedback. And then I think, obviously just running campaigns and testing out certain things, you'll get some signals. Are people clicking on ads? It's the classic engagement metrics that you're looking for. Are people even consuming the information? Are we getting it in front of the right people on LinkedIn, for example? Are they clicking through to check out the offer page? How much early interest do we have? And then, when you get some folks that actually do fill out the form, it's important to have those early conversations and figure out why did it resonate with them and initially, what feedback can we feedback into the process. Maybe we talk about it a different way. Maybe there was something else that struck them and we should include and make it more visible in an ad or on a landing page. So I just think marketing, it's a never-ending process, and it is really built on the conversations you have with prospects and customers, and it's testing for sure, but it's also just trying out different things. It's not even like you always have the answer, because maybe there's more than one answer,
Yeah.
So that's the one thing about testing. It's like, is it, A/B test, is it A or B? Sometimes it's A and B.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's C because you showed A and B before. I don't know if that made any sense, but that's how I view that.
Yeah. Attribution is always really hard. And I know sometimes we get people thinking like, oh, I'm just going to run one ABM campaign this year and I'll be set, when like what you said is, no, we should probably test it out. We should probably run it a couple times and try out different messaging, try out maybe some different offers. And we don't always need to start from scratch every time, but it's little tweaks in there that can make a difference.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, we covered a lot of really great stuff, from crafting an offer to creating some good messaging. Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think that last point was important where, if we go back to testing, I think it's important to just get some of these things rolling. It's still a classic problem that we run into where campaigns have to be perfect. You can't get any messages out there. The landing page has to be so tight that, is the headline exactly right? And a lot of times people are making all these decisions based on virtually no data at all. And it's so subjective between, 1, 2, 3 people that are in a room, and nobody truly knows. So get some things out there, run some ads, get some variety, just see what people respond to, both through paid programs and emails, but then also look inward and try to get in front of existing customers as well. They're sometimes your best, that's your best testing ground, is the people that you already have a relationship with. And sometimes maybe you don't even give them the offer, but just say, hey, would this be something that would interest you? If you're scrolling through LinkedIn, would this even matter to you? Those are underrated ways, I think, to get some insights.
Yeah, you can test things so easy and fast now. You don't always need to start a campaign with a huge list. You can learn things really easy on and test some of those assumptions that we might be making in these campaigns and get data back fast. That's the best way to keep iterating, is use the facts.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Tristan, for hopping on and chatting through this.
Yep. Always a pleasure, Baylee. Thanks.
Great. We'll see ya.
Thanks for checking out Tech Qualified. This show is brought to you by New North, a marketing agency that helps turn your small, scrappy marketing team into a growth engine. To find out more about New North or check out more episodes of this show, go to newnorth.com/techqualified.